Meerbott, host of Hidden Human. Today we're talking to Nancy Lee, an authenticity coach who talks about the stressful experiences she's had and the impact of feeling like she didn't belong and how it shaped her perspective. She and I also talk about the power of getting quiet and still and the amazing impact that silent retreats can have on your leadership. Take a listen and join us as we have a great conversation on Hidden Human. Welcome to the space where we reveal our personal humanity to reconnect with our shared humanity. Again, very, very excited. Love these guests that we've been having on Hidden Human. So let's begin our conversation with Nancy Lee, authenticity coach, author, speaker, facilitator, and all around amazing human. Nancy, we haven't known each other a long time, but I felt this, and I know that you kind of felt some kind of energy between us when we met a couple of weeks ago, which is why I wanted her on the podcast, because Nancy's mind is just a powerful tool and gift that we need to use on this planet. So welcome to Human. I'm so glad to have you.
Thank you. Wow, that is quite an accolade, Kelly. I really appreciate just your enthusiasm and what we shared during that conversation. Yeah.
It's absolutely true. You make an impact from the moment that somebody meets you. So, okay, Nancy, if I were a 6-year-old child and you were going to explain to me in a way that I can understand what an authenticity coach is, how would you explain that to me?
I help people who are really busy and have a lot on their plate, yet in touch with what's really important to them inside and bring it to the outside so they can share it with the world.
I mean, I've met some smart 6-year-olds. I don't know about you, but I've had a couple of 6-year-olds put me in my place, which is, I love that because they're always honest and unfiltered. But what was it in your soul that called you to this work? Because you and I both know as coaches, it's a calling. So what was it for you?
Yeah, it was actually like three different things. So, chronologically, I say as a kid, I'm Chinese American. I was born in America, but I wasn't American enough when I was in America. Like kids at school would be like, you don't speak English a certain way, which English is my second language. I didn't speak like this prior to going to school. And also my eyes are a certain way. So, but when I went to China, the converse happened. I wasn't Chinese enough to be Chinese. Without opening my mouth, I would walk into stores just to by the way I dress and the way I carry myself, the way I walk. They knew I was not born and raised in China. So I was like, who's the real Nancy? I'm not American enough. I'm not Chinese enough. It's a very confusing childhood. So that's the thing number one. And then the thing number two is that I entered a workplace. So as a first person in my family to go to college and actually go into the white collar labor sector versus, being very blue collar immigrant family, I was just really puzzled that my manager, my manager's manager, and people above me, we all talk like we were peers. But the reality is that we're not, right? Like they have power over me in terms of promotion, whether they invite me to certain projects, or lunch, or if they could be my champion in the workplace. And I was just very confused. Like, I feel like I had to be a certain person to be invited to the table, so to speak, right? So those are the two moments in my young life and adult life that I was like, ooh, who's the real Nancy? Do I just keep showing up as people want me to or think I am? Or do I really tell them like, hey, I'm actually Chinese American, not what you think I am, right? And the last piece is really realizing my power that authenticity works. I think the first two stories is where authenticity is confusing and when they're bringing it in. The third story is that I was working on a team that actually had really toxic culture. And when I say that, I'm not exaggerating. Unfortunately, there was a certain leader on the team where if you were younger and the more female you were, the more likely he was going to verbally say things that was not great. And I never witnessed it. I only heard about it, so I couldn't like step in because, I just heard about it. It was all hearsay. Um, and to give you a point about how bad it got, one of our more junior team members, she had to take a 2-month mental health leave. She was having panic attacks and anxiety and all that. It was also during the pandemic, but nevertheless, right? So a year later, for some reason or another, all the leaders left our team. to go to other companies, to go to a different division. There's four of them. Not all of them were, I don't want to say all of them were toxic. It was really one of them. But the other people allowed that behavior. I think also sometimes the allowance of it as a senior leader is just as sad, just as like, what are you doing as a leader if you're allowing this behavior? And then, so they all four of them left, and a new person came in, and I could tell she's like, has a vision, tiny, feisty woman who's like packs a punch. And I went up to her. I say, hey, like, you have such a vision, but not everybody on our team are business people. Can I help you define roles, responsibility, timelines? And can we heal the culture? And she let me run with it. And for every week, I ran team meetings to say, what do you want in this culture? And it wasn't a secret that the culture is broken and toxic. And people start defining what they want. And I didn't want the fluffy words, the words like, I want to be innovative or collaborative or whatever it is. I wanted to actually anchor to behaviors that we could see, touch, feel, all those things. And organically over a year, something emerged maybe at the half year point called human first culture. Kind of like your show Hidden Human. Like at workplace, we're actually human first. Then we get the work done. And so the impact was amazing. First of all, there is a lot more increased trust. People care about each other. Those who didn't want to stay because they were so scarred, they left. But those who stayed and joined, we're pivoting our portfolio of business, and we were able to pick up the new work, get new clients, actually implement it in a decent fashion. And also on the employee satisfaction survey, it was annual, our team went from like one of the lowest to actually the highest. So that already is the impact of being authentic. So again, I seen that authenticity works, and it works in very tangible ways, not just like kumbaya, we hold hands. It works in that it impacts the bottom line of the business.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with you. And I'm thinking about a team that my business partner and I are working with, and it's a very, very dysfunctional C-suite. And we keep trying to explain to them exactly what you said, and that this is not fluffy. This is not, that there is a tangible monetary impact when you are your full self. And you're right, it is human first. And as I was listening to your story about intersectionality, I was thinking, God, that's exhausting. Right. It just is, right? And I think for me, when I dropped the, okay, this is the way I'm supposed to be coaching, this is who I'm supposed to be, and dropped all of that ego identification, like, first of all, my coaching skills leveled up. The type of people I started working with were at a different level. And it impacted the bottom line. So, I mean, I am nodding my head in 100% full agreement of that. So, what I'm wondering is, because you had all these defining moments that just kind of stacked up from when you were a child, right? And they informed who you were. But how would you describe your leadership philosophy, and how has it evolved over time, would you say, Nancy?
Yeah. So currently, I would say empathetic. Like you have to see people where they're coming from. You can't, I mean, people have lives outside of work, right? Even though they want to progress and get to whatever goals they have in the company or their role, ultimately they have lives outside of it. And to not account for it makes no sense. Like whether you have a family member you need to take care of, or young children, or family dynamics that we can't even imagine sometimes, right? The second is having a space where people could like show up and not feel a judgment, right? Is oftentimes, and it has to be deliberate, because especially in the corporate world, like we're in back-to-back meetings. I remember days when I was in back-to-back meetings, having to manage the teams, deal with the clients, and then still like make sure my senior manager knows like what the heck I'm doing. So there literally is no space to slow down. And my analogy is this: like we're all in this car driving down the highway, and our window is just being splattered with bugs. This is bug season, it's summertime, right? And you're like, no, I cannot stop the car and then clean off the bugs, because if I do, I'm just not going to get to my destination. I need to get there ASAP, like yesterday. But my back to analogy is that if you stop the car, clean it out, you're going to get a much clearer vision of where you want to go. you're going to probably not get into accidents. You're going to get there safer and smoother, and you're going to be less stressed getting there. So just even like creating that space where you don't feel like you're judging. And I think a lot of it, to create that space, you really have to be intentional because we're always go, go, go versus like, let me just like pause and say, this is 15 minutes. I'm not going to relinquish it to anyone or anything. I'm going to give it to myself. Right. So the safe space. And I think another thing is feedback. It's so important. Because we all have blind spots. Literally, we have two eyes. Like scientifically speaking, if you close one eye and then close the other, you notice your perspective literally shifts. But we also have blind spots.
Wait. Slow down, slow down. Say that again,
So
because
we have
that is
we
powerful,
have two eyes. If you
right?
close your left eye, notice what you see. When you flip it around, close your right eye and open your left eye. Do you see there's like a slight shift, literally like physical shift, because our eyes are in two different spots, and we're not a cyclop. We don't have back to your fables. We don't have your cyclop eye, one in the middle. We have two. So that inevitably means, scientifically speaking, we have blind spots. Just physically, we have blind spots, but emotionally, mentally, we also have blind spots. So the only way we can see our blind spots if someone tells us about them, right?
I love that analogy and that physicality that you're using, because you and I both know as coaches, connecting with your body and saying things like, I say this in a coaching session, if your body could tell you something right now, what is it saying to you? Or what is your energy saying to you? And I think, knowing what I know about the eyes, and that 80% of the information that is processed in our brain comes through our eyes, to cut off that resource like that is really interesting. And then, of course, I was thinking about how my car has blind spot
Yes.
on it, and I have it tuned, Nancy, to the most sensitive like setting. So if cars are coming in the opposite direction and kind of leaning over into my lane, and it's like 250 feet ahead, the car's going off. So even that is a signal to us that we're missing something. So, I really I love the feedback piece. I love the eye piece. And then the other thing I was thinking is, a friend of mine, Liberty, told me this analogy, and I'd love to hear what you thought about it. Is you put your hand in front of your face, right? And you blow cold. Now blow hot.
Yeah.
So you can change your state in a breath,
Yes.
which, like, I can say that to you and Nancy gets it right away. Sometimes I say that to people and they're like, I don't understand what you're saying. And we have control of that.
And I think the most basic, like you said, is like the breath, right? Like when we say control, I want to also clarify. I mean, like, we don't get to control the outcome, but we
Correct.
get to control the input, right? Like, so if I'm stressed out and then you're like, Kelly, like you're my coach, you say like, like take one breath or whatever. I'd be like, oh yeah, let me breathe it. And I know it sounds so simple. A lot of these things we talk about, these tools are not hard. It's the remembering to do it, or even noticing that we're slipping into a certain state. So let's say, wow, there's this voice that's being really harsh right now to me, right? And it's telling me like things are gonna suck, I'm gonna fail, not gonna get that promotion. Why bother, right? So first is noticing what's happening first, and mindfulness helps with that. But then what I'm hearing from you is like, let me just like pause, and then what is my input? I'm noticing my input is all these terrible things about myself, and then pausing, and then taking that breath, and noticing that, wow, it kind of disrupts it a little bit, it weakens it, but I can't control how much it weakens or how many breath I need to take or things like that.
One of the things I talk with my clients about, and I think you and I talked about this, is Abraham Maslow's locus of control. And the locus of control is inside of us, right? We can only control what we think, feel, say, and do, right? We can't control what's coming at us, but we can control what the reaction to it is, which is exactly right. And like, let me clarify. I don't believe that control is the actual thing. It's an illusion. Like, if you think you can control what's going on out there, it's just not true.
I would say influence. I actually took away the smaller circle sometimes for myself because I think initially just to take away somebody's inner circle control and the exercise feels very daunting because then I control nothing. But I think it's more like the influence versus what I cannot, right? Initially, I do just give them the three circles of locus of control, and for people who are not seeing it, is three circles concentric within each other. The smallest circle are things you can control. The bigger circle are things you can influence, and the last circle is things that you cannot control.
What is the most challenging leadership position or leadership situation you've ever been in, and how did you navigate it?
I think for me was not believing in my own power. So with this working with this person, this leader who then gave me the opportunity to have these weekly meetings, she actually promoted me and gave me a great raise and bonus along that. But what I started doing was actually stressing out about it because I felt like, well, I don't want to let her down, right? I want to make sure I deserve this promotion. Even though she gave it to me, I want to make sure like she still feels like I'm this shiny thing that could go far, right? And I kept putting a lot of pressure on myself. And I was working harder, doing things like checking emails till later. And even though I wasn't going to respond, but it was still like playing in my head. And it wasn't helpful because then the way I show up is like having more tension and always wanting to prove that I deserve this versus like exercises and the reality is that I already did earn it, right? Um, and that is something that I think when people make transitions, these are people I love to work with because transitions are hard, right? Whether you just got promoted or you got a new job, there's still a little part of us that thinks like, "Ooh, I gotta earn it. I gotta show it," right? And if I don't do it all the time, somehow shouldn't be sitting at the table. I'm not good enough. Some people call it imposter syndrome. I don't really like that terminology, but you could call it imposter syndrome. So I had a bit of that, and it took time to then say like, "Hey, like I do." Like, and I was taking on more and more bigger roles. I was doing a strategy for the whole business, and that involved workshops with leadership many levels above me, and even getting them to like do mindfulness exercise before the meeting. Something it was not part of the company culture, but I strongly believe if we ground, then our meetings will go smoother. So to be able to like bring that part of me to work and say like, I love mindfulness meditation. This will help our work, and then to actually host, you know, for my team, I actually host these weekly mindfulness meditation meetings. It's only like 20 minutes, right? And usually the more junior people show up, the more senior people didn't have time. But I started to walk my walk and bring things that I actually practice and believe in versus like hiding it because I used to hide all these things. And to show up more fully really helped, and people like knew that like this is what I'm into, and they're also more open to it myself, and it actually had impact on my work, and people are able to work with me more, trust me, knew that I'm this person who shows up a certain way. And because I can, so can they.
Since we're talking about retreats, and then I'll pivot into another question. Nancy and I have something in common that I haven't heard a lot of leaders do, and I actually love them, even though I like to talk to, which is silent retreats. I love a silent retreat. I've been on them before. It is wildly uncomfortable for me the first 24 to 48 hours. And then it's like my central nervous system comes down, locks in, things become really clear, and I get really creative and I can hear myself again.
Yes.
So, talk to me about how you found silent retreats and what they do for you as a leader, and what you think that that silent moment would do for the leaders in our world.
For me, I found it because 2016 was a really rough year in my life. A lot of like family health issue, my own health issue, things. All the tools in my toolbox did not work. Have you ever gotten to that point?
Yes, last year when I was in menopause, I was like, what is happening right now? I everything I was doing that worked before, I'm like, this is not working. So, okay, health issues in 2016, your tools are not working.
And I tend to say this is very indicative of most high achievers. We're used to getting things done, getting things like good enough, and getting the accolades. So it is hard when it's like, wow, nothing works. If I work harder, I do X, Y, Z, it doesn't get me further. Like the whole like sinking feeling that no tools in my toolbox work, right? And my friend lent me Eckhart Tolle's book, Power of Now. And I'm not into self help books and books of this nature in general prior to this. But when I read it, I felt like he lovingly punched me in the face. You know, he's not violent at all, but if it was that forceful, that impact of like, wow, like here's this person saying the only moment we ever have is this current moment. And oftentimes we tell ourselves we cannot be happy because something happened in our past, or we cannot be happy until we get that something in the future. But all we have is this current moment. But the thing is that the book, while very inspirational, doesn't tell you like how to be in the present moment. Like it's very theoretical, very high level. So a friend of mine was also into all of this, told me about silent meditation retreats, and I went there. So in terms of the benefits, first of all, at least for me, the benefits are not like right away because the first few days is like realizing that I'm kind of crazy on the inside. I don't know if you got that feeling.
Yup. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, you're
I
like, wow, there's a voice. Like the difference between me and an actual person who's insane talking out loud is that I'm talking internally all the time and they're expressing it verbally outside.
yeah. Yeah.
Like quote unquote, I have more self-control, but that's the only difference. And so to observe that and be like, oh my gosh, this is overwhelming. Like I can't even journal about it. I can't tell people about it. You know, I'm just literally sitting with this part that won't shut up, right? And the thoughts are sometimes not that nice. But then I think the next few days is then to kind of hit that brick wall in a way and then say, like, this is the reality and not to fight it. And then when certain thoughts come up to say, like, wow, like that must have been hard for you, right? Or I can see why you keep worrying about the same thing because it's important to you and you think it's going to have an impact on your life. And if you don't take care of it, you think you're going to end up homeless or whatever extreme situations we imagine. So I think slowing down, and then I love it at the end because then we finally start to talk, and you realize like I'm not the only one because you start talking with other meditators, and you're like everybody's like sharing very similar stories, and we also have stories about each other because even though we can't talk to the other meditators, we have stories about them. Like I can't believe they coughed so much or they're breathing so heavily. Or like I can't believe they're always like the first one to get to the dining hall and get all the best food, right? Like, and then you tell these stories, and then like you realize that we're all telling stories about each other. So I think it for the benefits is realizing like how our mind works, and then realizing it's not unnatural.
How do you think it would benefit the leaders? Let's talk about at different levels, like so C-suite, director level, and emerging leaders. How do you think silent retreats would benefit them?
So if you're all the way on top on the C-suite, let's face it, the way you get things done is through other people. You can are not getting. Yes, you may set the strategy. Yes, you may say this is like the overall how we're going to spend our budget. But ultimately, to get things done, you have to get it done for other people because the amount of responsibility and the outcome you're responsible for is not possible for one person to achieve because we all only have 24 hours in a day, right? No matter how young, old, tall, short, wealthy, non-wealthy are, we literally only have 24 hours a day. And even if you don't sleep that much, there's literally only 24 hours a day. So to get things done as a C-suite, you need to rely on and count on and trust other people, right? And also learn who you cannot rely on or how far you could hold them accountable and what empowers them. Are you a micromanager or are you empowerment? There's also different types of leadership, right? At that level. And realizing like if I'm a micromanager, I can only go so far. And if I could empower others, like the work gets magnified in a lot of ways. So if you agree as a C-suite level that like your work is dependent on other people and you'll quote unquote get more milk from the cow if you empower others versus control others, then noticing where you are along this spectrum, right? Having that self-awareness, and if you're okay being more of a micromanager and controlling, but understanding that will give you a certain type of morale and only unlock so much potential for your organization, you're satisfied with that, that's fine. But if you know that there's a lot of hidden potential among your organization and the people, and you want to move towards power with instead of power over. So there's power over, which is the controlling, but then there's empowerment, which is power with. If you want to move towards power with, you need that authenticity, right? These people need to know you, like you, and trust you. And if you're not authentically showing up, people could tell like a mile away, not like, oh, something, I can't get closer to that person, literally and figuratively. Yeah. So that's on the C level. What kind of leader do you want to be? How much of other people's potential within the organization you want to unlock? Or do you want to keep it to yourself and then you become the bottleneck of your organization?
Okay, so what about directors and emerging leaders? How do you think they could benefit from taking some time in silence?
Emerging leaders, well, directors are in between, right? They're in between the really
Yeah,
senior people.
so yeah, so they report up to the C-suite. I see them as the ones that are executing the strategy, the ones that the C-suite you're talking, how are we getting the highest potential out of them? What obstacles do we need to move out of the way? And they're the ones carrying out the plans, they're on the front lines, that kind of thing.
So for me, the directors are the in between, right? If you want to simplify the sandwich, right, is in the mid between layer. It's like the peanut butter that holds the two pieces of bread, which are just the C level and the people doing the work, right? So
Nancy, you and your analogies are so good. I love it.
well, so if you're the peanut butter, you need to hold both sides of the bread together, right? So you need to be able to hold, like, understand enough of the strategy at your department and able to implement it, but then translate it into roles, responsibility, and timeline so people who are implementing it have a crystal clear idea of their responsibility. And if you don't have that mindfulness or the space to translate, you need the space to translate fluffy words into tangible actions, roles, and responsibility. So I think mindfulness helps give you that space to say, like, this is where the strategy is, but this is what I need to get the team to tangibly do. And how do you navigate when there's a gap, right? Like, for example, the strategy is not doable, or like you need more resources, you need more people, or people need certain tools and support to get things done. And so how do we then be that, um, I call it the ambassador. It's like being an ambassador between like two countries, and you need to be fluent in multiple languages, or else like things are going to be lost in translation.
I love that. I love that. Okay. So I'm going to ask you one last question and then we'll do some rapid fire. Are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So who are the leaders that have inspired you the most and what lessons did you take from them?
The leader who let me run these team meetings, she is a tiny woman. She's a Quaker, and she really holds her values close. And she's able to very directly say what is working, what is not, but always very gently. So she's like the voice that is willing to say the tough things, but also can hold a lot of space for compassion. So she's one. Another leader, she's African American. She was my manager. She's an African American woman, grew up in Philadelphia. And what I appreciate about her is actually her faith. And she's a very strong Christian. And she just, something, it's nice to have something to anchor to that's higher than ourselves. And it takes her out of like the whole like, woe is me, or like it's all on my shoulders. And her faith of navigating through tough times, whether professionally and personally, because we've become friends and now we have dinner once a quarter together along with a former client and we share personal things, like knowing that her faith is what keeps her afloat, it's like really inspiring. And she's actually the one who's also, I was like, one time I asked her, I was like, hey, you have all these like great ideas, and she's so creative. I was like, well, aren't you afraid of you telling people your great ideas that someone would take them and like just like claim them as their own? Because now she's moving into a sales role. She's like, Nancy, they could take it. I have way more in the bag. And like her level of confidence to always believe she could come with something new, that there's not a finite thing, is something I took away from it, because it's like thinking like, oh, I only have so much good ideas, and if someone uses it, I'm out of luck. Versus her saying, oh, you could take it. I have way more than that. Yeah, so those two people, I think, when I notice people who I look up to tend to have something that grounds them. In this case, is their faith, whether they're Quaker or Christian, and that really inspires me.
I literally love that, and you had no way of knowing this, but, that's really big for me too, and I was fortunate enough this past Sunday to go with friends to the grand opening of the Cambodian temple in Southwest Philadelphia. Well, I first of all didn't know the story of the Cambodian Buddha, and one of the monks walked me and my friend through it. Now she's Cambodian, so she's grown up in the culture, and she's like, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. But the moment that will stay with me forever is when 250 monks circled the temple, and you either my friend Maya said to me, "Do you wanna give them rice or dollar bills? Because you do either, that's tradition, right?" And I said, "I'll do rice." And what was really interesting was the act of feeding these monks, 250 of them, cooked rice, and how they gave blessings. And these men, I never met him before, but they were, bestowing blessings on me and telling me that I was lucky and all of these things. And it was just, it was a moment for me where I was literally washed with faith and the spirit and God and whatever you want to call it. And then the act of feeding somebody is such a humble act because they were feeding me right back spiritually. And I mean, even as I think about it, I'm like still blown away by that moment. And as we were talking to the monks, Nancy, and I know you will have some beautiful analogy about this, but first of all, the Cambodian Buddhist religion was started by a woman, Queen Maya. Then we've got Mary in Christianity, the Virgin Mother, and I forget who it was. Forgive me, in Judaism, who saved Moses, and it's all of these women that started these major religions, and the commonalities and the numbers, there's more in common than there is different. So I love that you gave us that segue. And it really is, for me, it doesn't matter who you vote for, pray to, or sleep with, as long as you're connected and a good person, have at it.
Yeah, I love it when you said you were both feeding each other. And back to being human first or human, hidden human, right? I think that's what we do consciously, unconsciously. We feed each other, but what do we feed each other? And and also, but that has to originate with what we feed ourselves, right? We can only give what we have. We can't give what we don't have. I think when we see people feeding each other in things that we don't like, is because that's all they have for now, right? And to be conscious, like that's not nourishing for me. No, thank you. Versus, yes, this is so yummy, so delicious. Give me more.
Like I said, it was a moment in time that I will never forget, and I hope it just stays in my heart and in me for as long as I live. But yeah, I love that because people who are grounded in faith, whatever it is, really inspire me as well. And especially like that comment about um to let them take it, I have more, right? It's that the human version of that, meaning the not connected version of that, is there's not enough for us to go around. Like one of the things that I think you and I found in common with each other was you had said that you had had some conversations with other coaches who saw you as competition. And I was like, no, because there's nobody who does your work like you. There never has been, and there never will be again, right? So I love when prospects ask me, like, how are you different? And my answer is, I don't know. I'm just me. That I'm me. That's it. Like nobody's going to bring Kelly Meerbott. Nobody's going to bring Nancy Lee, and all of our experiences. And for me, and I know you subscribe to this too. It's for the help, healing, and highest good and the most benevolent outcome. So if somebody comes into my world, wants me as a coach, and I'm not a good fit, and you are, I'm sending them to you. So it's just, but I love it, and I could talk to you for hours, Nancy. Like you
Same
just are
here.
such a gift. Okay, so are you ready for 4 rapid fire questions?
Yes, go for it.
So what is your favorite comfort food?
There's something called Chinese sausage, lapchang. Have you ever had it? It's a bit sweet. It's totally peasant food. You could buy a pack, and it probably has a lot of pork fats in it, but it's delicious. It's one of my childhood food. And when I was in college, I went to University of Virginia, and I didn't have a lot of money. I couldn't afford like food off campus, and the food on campus was not great. I bought my own rice cooker, rice, and Chinese sausage, which doesn't need to be refrigerated, and just like cook the rice and put the sausage in and steam it. It was very peasant-y food, but it's what I grew up on.
So, what books are on your nightstand?
So I have several. It's a lot right now. So I have Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. She's a Native American botanist ecologist, but she also is really into plants, and she writes these. It was a book that I read, and then I was like, wow, I forgot how beautiful words can be together. That was like how I felt about the book. I was like, wow, like I read a lot of books that were more non-fictional. This is also nonfiction, but it's like the words that come together are just like so beautiful that I had to like pause, cry in between anything. So yeah, I also have What It Takes to Heal by Princess Hemphill, and it's really interesting to see from a perspective a black queer woman, just like what and who's been an activist, what and also a therapist. And I'm also reading Positive Quotient. So instead of emotional intelligence, or positive intelligence, instead of emotional intelligence, EQ, and IQ, there's a coach out there who talks about positive intelligence. And it includes a lot of the body stuff we talked about, actually very similar awareness, and talks about the 9 saboteurs.
What songs are on your playlist?
I have this thing now where I don't listen to songs of words, because if you like look at most pop music, it's always like, I don't have love, I'm so sad, or I have love and it's so terrible. And I'm like, so words and music get stuck in my head a lot. And so for me, I've been more conscious of choosing songs about words or words I do not understand. So, for example, it's like there was a phase in my life where I watch a lot of Korean drama because it's the pandemic. Always romantic Korean drama, no scary stuff. I can't handle it. So I would take the songs I enjoy from the different dramas and make a playlist. I understand none of the words because I don't speak Korean, but I get to make up the words in my mind, and like, oh, this is the feeling I have, versus like artists telling me what to feel and what words to use.
I love that, and I agree with you. And like, I used to be able to run a playlist in the background when I was writing, and then the lyrics would start showing up in my work, and I'm like, nope, can't do that. Okay, so what are you most grateful for in this moment right now?
Grateful for our conversation and getting to learn about each other, and you pulling out different parts of me to show up. And it feels like I'm also pulling out different parts of you, and it feels fun. It feels warm, and I hope this also. I'm hopeful and grateful an opportunity to share this with the world of how we see things. And yeah, I just think it's been a lot of fun connecting with you.
I mean, yeah, this is why I wanted you on, because our first conversation was so fun, playful, flowy, and I'm just grateful for you that you've given us your most precious currency, which is time. Um, if somebody wanted to reach out to you to work with you, besides the cohort that you are a member of, um, how can they get in touch with you, Nancy?
You use my website, which is I'm gonna spell it
Spell it.
out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
spell it.
so it's Pen Apple Nancy Apple Pen Apple Nancy YoYoApple.com. Panya Panya. Or you could find me on LinkedIn as Nancy Lee, Li, not Lee. I always tell people Jet Li, not Bruce Lee. If you actually even watch Chinese martial arts films. So it's Li, and also type in Philadelphia or Coach, because there's a lot of Nancy Lees out there. And I actually write articles once a week on LinkedIn and also on my website. So either way, if you sign up on my email list, you get my articles once a week, or LinkedIn. And I also have an Instagram if you want. Those are more short pieces and those are more experimental.
So thank you for being on, Nancy, and thank you to our audience for listening. It's our intention on Hidden Human to inspire you to go out and have authentic conversations to deepen the connections in your life. Thank you so much, and make it a great day.